Hello and welcome to Spread Book Joy. Welcome to our new location. I'm not going to film out here very often because I don't like filming outside, but there's no neighbours at the moment, though we will be getting some next door neighbours very soon. But this is our view from our balcony. So this is what we see every morning when we wake up, which is a huge part of the reason that we moved out of London, is to get fresh air, and my partner's asthma is already feeling better. It's just, yeah, it's been really, really lovely. So we have been here for 3 weeks. Last I spoke to you was probably, I did film a video to do the Frankenstein announcement because I'm going to be hosting a read along of Frankenstein, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I last properly spoke and updated you guys on what's going on about a month ago. We have been in this house for 3 weeks. For half of that time I've been in London because I've got stuff going on, work, still a little bit of work, and also family to see. Also I went to see Take That, so if you're not from the UK you might not know who they are, but if you are, yes, I am a big Take That fan. So I went to see Take That at Hyde Park with 100,000 other people. Might put some pictures up here at some point, but yeah, loved it. I don't think I've spent a full week in this house yet. So this is the 3rd week. We moved in 3 weeks ago today. It's a Friday and it's just beautiful. So far we're loving it, and obviously, you know, we've had brilliant weather apart from the last week has pretty much been lots of rain and overcast, but that's been fine after the month of blazing sunshine that we had here in the UK. So today I thought I'd film out here because I think it's the last good day of the weekend. I think it's going to be rainy, so I thought I'd film outside, even though it's a bit windy. So I've got my little fluffy mic hat on, so hopefully that's not interfering too much because of this. But yes, so I just wanted to update you. I'm going to put in some footage of some of the things that we've been doing. This evening we're going to go to a sort of local festival which is running in a village nearby. It's called the Revel, and it's running in a village where the church, which is I think 12th century, might be wrong, maybe 13th century. I'll put some footage up in a bit. Well, actually, I'm going to cut away and put some footage up. It's a beautiful church. This is the Church of St Thomas of Canterbury in the mid-Devon village of Lapford, which is a tiny village, and it's a beautiful old church. There's been a building here since at least the 12th century, and it has been refurbished a number of times. The first time was by William de Tracy, who was one of the lords of the manor here, and he is one of the murderers of St Thomas a Becket, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and as penance the king ordered him to rebuild and build a number of churches, and this was one of them. It was also refurbished in the 15th century, so these benches, you'll see the ornate ends of these benches, I'll do a close-up soon, they're from the 15th century, and the organ at the back was from the 19th century rebuild, as is the really elaborate screen at the end. St Thomas is supposed to be haunting the village of Lapford. They call him Old Tom, and on the 7th of July he rides around the village, supposedly on a horse, and on the 7th of July, which is his feast day, that's when they celebrate the Lapford Revel every year. They have a thing every year called the Revel, usual village kind of thing. There's food, there's drink, there's music, all sorts of things. And then they do that today and tomorrow. And then on Sunday, I think they have a mass at the church. But yeah, we're going to go and check out the procession thing because that should be interesting. And the sort of thing that we want to go and see while we're here, you know. And I keep saying, someone asked me in the comments a little while ago when I keep saying while we're here, well, we're in this house for a year, and if we like Devon, we'll stay. So I'm saying while we're here because, you know, we need to make up our minds about it by the end of the year, really. That's what's happening today. Country life. And there is old Tom outside the church at Lapford. And here is the old malt scoop, which is the village inn, and here comes the procession. And every year at the procession they march the Lapford King and Queen, who will be crowned down there at the church for the Revel. I've had to refilm part of the video because the wind, when I played it back, got a bit too crackly, even with the furry hat on the mic. So what was I going to talk to you about? Yeah, so I did go, this is Saturday, I filmed the first part yesterday. It's a bit gloomier today, so I'm just going to talk to you inside because it's still a bit windy out there. And yeah, we went to the Revel, the first night of the Revel anyway, where they have the procession, and old Tom, and I'll put some footage in here while I'm talking to you about it. It was really lovely, really nice community event, and it was nice to meet some people. And we're going to go out again today, second day of the Revel. There's barbecue, there's a band, there's all sorts of things going on. So yeah, that's going to be fun. So since I last properly spoke to you about what I've been reading, it's been about 6 weeks, because the last few videos I filmed were announcement videos really about plans for reading and stuff like that. So what have I been reading? Well, it sounds like a lot. Since I last properly spoke to you, I think I've finished 11 books, but that was like the middle of May, and now it's the beginning of July, and I think in June I only finished 4. So yeah, it's been a bit of a strange time for me reading wise, because I've just not had the mental capacity to do as much reading as I like. Well, I've been reading every day, but I've been starting lots of books and not finishing them. And I don't know if anyone else gets like that sometimes, where they just can't really settle on one book. And I've got a lot of books on the go at the moment, so I'm kind of going to talk to you briefly about everything, because for some of the things I'm going to have reviews coming out, and for other things I just want to talk briefly about them because there's just too much to catch you up on. So here we go. Back in the middle of May, 8 weeks ago, I finished this, which is Jamie by L.D. Lipinski, and it's about a non-binary child who is trying to decide which secondary school they're going to go to, and the local secondary schools only take boys or girls, so they're wondering where they fit in. And I really enjoyed this, and it was nice to read a book about a trans child that is from a UK perspective, because I've only read trans books for young people from an American perspective, so it was quite nice. And L.D. Lipinski is an author I've wanted to read for some time, because they have a series called The Strange Worlds Travel Agency, which I read about or heard about on my lovely friend Ariel's channel, Reading and Whatnot, and they have a non-binary character in there, and L.D. Lipinski is a non-binary author. So yeah, I was really excited to see this and picked up in Waterstones. I'm going to do a review of it, so I won't talk about it anymore here. Then I finished Jude the Obscure as part of Misery May. I might have talked about this briefly, but I don't think I talked about the fact that I finished it. I really couldn't stop reading it. It's very compelling, and I did want to do a review of it, and I may or may not do. But Jude the Obscure is the tale of Jude, I want to say Fawley, is that his name? We follow his whole life from pretty much early days as an orphan who's being raised by his aunt, and he has aspirations to better himself and have be educated, and he wants to go to university and all those things, but he's poor. So it was a really, really interesting book in the perspective of looking at education and what it can do for you, and social mobility, particularly in the Victorian times, and how hard or almost impossible that was. And yeah, there was also his relationships with 2 women in his life, and they were typically messy, as I'm coming to realise Hardy's romantic relationships in books are very, very complex, messy, and not very successful usually. But yeah, I don't think it's been too long now for me to do a review of Jude the Obscure, but I really enjoyed reading it, and I really enjoyed reading with the group. So that was organised by Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and Gemma from Gemma Books. That was really fun. Misery May. Misery May? Yeah, but it was. Then, as part of Mental Health May, which is run by Marilyn Maya Mendoza and Kim from Middle of the Book March, I read the Natural Health Service, which is all about what the great outdoors can do for your mind. And I really enjoyed this. Some of it was very obvious, but some of it was really inspiring. And one of the things that inspired me a lot is the fact that I've moved to the countryside, and the author talks a lot about how she goes orchid hunting and wild orchid hunting and like identifying wildflowers, and that helps her to be more mindful in nature, because she finds mindfulness practice really difficult. But when you're looking out and paying close attention to what you're seeing all around you, that is mindful. So yeah, I really liked that. I also read a really great non-fiction book, which was out of the blue. It was mentioned in one of the chats for the plod-alongs that were hosted for the Women's Prize by Charlie and Alice and Gemma. And they had someone mentioned this book. This is not a book about Benedict Cumberbatch. And it was on Scribd, so I read it and I listened to it actually. I listened to it within like a day, because it was really quick listen, very, very funny, but very, very informative and thought-provoking actually. This is all about the obsessions that we have and develop, and how particularly if you're a woman, if you have an obsession with a celebrity or anything that you're obsessed with or that you're obsessive about, if you're a woman particularly, then it's seen as quite a negative and unhealthy thing, even if it makes you just super happy. Whereas if you're a man and you're into a sport and you know all the stats for your team and all you do is talk about them and obsess about them and everything else, that's not unhealthy. So yeah, it was really thought-provoking, very funny. I think I'm definitely going to keep an eye out. The woman who wrote it is a journalist from Australia, Trudy Carvan. She was fantastic, very funny, like really kind of self-deprecating humour about her obsession with Benedict Cumberbatch and how it started. And while it says this is not a book about Benedict Cumberbatch, it isn't, but she talks so much about him. Kind of made me want to watch episodes of Sherlock again. So yeah, it's interesting because we get these sort of, I'm someone who gets obsessed with certain things, certain hobbies or topics or programs. I go down rabbit holes, and for like a few weeks on end I will just obsess about that thing. Sometimes it's a lifetime obsession, like I have for like David Bowie and his music, which actually really kicked off my proper obsession with his stuff, kicked off in my 30s, my early 30s, but I've always been a fan. But yeah, it's interesting, and she was saying how happy it can make you to just indulge in these obsessions. And obsession sounds like a weird word. Interest, I suppose, is a way of putting it. But yeah, I found it a really fascinating book, and I think I might listen to it again actually, because it was a quick listen, and I think it's worth doing a video on its own about. But really good. I finally finished Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton, and Tom Felton played Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter films, and it's his life story so far, and I was really impressed with it. I really enjoyed this. I quite like reading about child stars. So that's another strange interest of mine. But I do enjoy listening to it because, or reading about these lives they've led, because they're really unconventional, often very unhealthy. And I don't know, I just find it fascinating. And I also, particularly because I loved the whole Harry Potter series and franchise of films particularly, so yeah, this was interesting for me to read. So this was from Dani at Dani's Book World. She sent it to me for Christmas, so thank you, Dani. I really enjoyed it, thank you so much. I then read Bookshops and Bone Dust as an arc from NetGalley. This is the follow-up by Travis Baldry of Legends and Lattes, which was one of my favourite books last year, and I will have a review coming out on it because it's an advanced reader copy. So I finished reading it about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I still haven't done my NetGalley review, which is terrible, but I will do, and I'll put up a video here as well. I also then read Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt, and this was something I saw over on Amy's channel, Amy from BookTube with Amy, and she loved it and she raved about it. It's a horror story about two women who are friends or were friends, and something happened to them and a third friend of theirs when they went into this house, and we're sort of coming into this after it's happened and seeing things. Both of them think the other one is at fault and has done something to them, and I won't go into what it is for spoilers, but it's horrific. It's a horrifying story, which actually the house in it represents fascism, and so I was there for that because I thought, well, that is a horror story in itself, isn't it? The two main characters, one is a mixed race, I think she's mixed race, part Asian heritage girl, and another is a trans woman, and they met at university with their third friend. And yeah, it's a really shocking book in many ways, but it has a lot to say about prejudice and transphobia and homophobia and misogyny and fascism and racism and all of these things. It has an awful lot of good commentary on those things. So yeah, it's well worth a read if you don't mind extremely graphic, and I mean graphic, scenes of sexual violence which were in it, which I found really difficult to read. So I'm glad I read the book because I think it had a lot to say, but I found that a very, very difficult read in a lot of ways. But Amy's got a fantastic review of it, and I'll link that in the description box below. I finished this lovely book. It's a middle grade book, The Secrets of Haven Point, and I'm going to do a review because I was sent it for my review, which is up, probably hopefully up by now, on the Just Imagine website, which is a website I do reviews for teachers and parents and people like that. It's a really, really excellent resource if you're a parent or a teacher for critical reviews of children's literature, often from a social justice perspective. This is a really lovely adventure story about some children who live in a lighthouse, and it's got amazing disability rep because everybody that lives at the lighthouse is disabled in some way, and the author is disabled herself, and it's an own voices story, and I thought it was really good, so I'm going to put a review of this out, so I won't talk about it anymore here. Then, just for the pure fun of it, I've been rereading the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and I've been reading it with Alice and Gemma. This is the second book we read before they are hanged. It's my third time reading the series, my second time listening to it. The audiobooks are amazingly narrated by Stephen Pacey, and we just loved this read. I can't wait for the third and final instalment of the trilogy. It's the third time I'm reading it because every time I read the trilogy I think, right, I'll start the other books in the series because I have terrible memory for detail, and if I start the new books in the series I'll be like, is this relevant to any of the other books? I won't know, so I want to continue with this series quite quickly because there's another set of books. There's books set in the universe of the First Law. There's another, like a follow-up trilogy which I've not read, and I really want to get into those, so that's why I was rereading it. And then Alice was reading it because I'd recommended the series to her she wanted to read some fantasy. She's not really a fantasy reader, and she's really loved the first book, and Gemma had read the first book and hadn't read the second, so we decided, well, let's just read the second and third books together, and it's been so much fun, just really, really enjoyable. If you've never read them, they're grimdark fantasy set in a world, lots of political intrigue, lots of fantastic twists and turns, and brilliant characters. Joe Abercrombie writes amazing characters, so highly recommend the First Law trilogy if you've never read it. Really good, very violent. This is why it's grimdark, but that doesn't bother me too much. But yeah, in case you're wondering, it is a bit violent. But yeah, I love it. I love that series. Then I read The Death of Vivek Oji. I buddy read this with Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girls. My first buddy read with Jolene, which I can't quite believe. She was a wonderful buddy reader, so insightful, so thoughtful, and yeah, I really enjoyed reading this with her. And I think we both said that it was a really compelling book, and it's about Vivek Oji, who is found dead on his parents' porch, and it starts off with that scene. I don't know if it starts with that scene, but we know that Vivek is dead at the start of the book, and then the book is narrated from various perspectives, including Vivek at certain points, and we get to find out what happened to Vivek, and it's really compelling, a really compelling read. A lot of really important issues are explored in the book, and I just found it a really good read. Emezi's really compelling as a writer. I find Emezi's writing to be really engaging, and yeah, I like their work a lot. This is my fourth Emezi book, I think. I've only got one more Emezi work to read. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more Emezi again in the future. One thing that Jolene pointed out, and I thought, yes, you're right, it gave us Shuggie Bain vibes, which is a strange thing to say, and I can't really go into it without spoiling either book, but just the way that the main character that is the book revolves around, and all the other characters' reactions to that character, the way that character feels different from every other character in the book. They feel kind of special, but their specialness is kind of feared by other people and mocked, and yeah, they suffer because of the way they are different. And I was like, yes, because I loved Vivek as a character, and I really love Shuggie, and your heart breaks for both of them. So I kind of got that parallel. I thought it was a really good parallel for Jolene to make. Yes, that was a great buddy read. I have just finished The Dance Tree by Kieran Millward Hargrave, which was our FOMO book club pick for May and June, and we are going to talk about this on Alice's channel this evening because this video I'm planning to put it out on Sunday. So yeah, so if you want to know more about The Dance Tree, it's a historical fiction set in Strasbourg in the 15th century or beginning of the 16th century, where this is a true event that happened. A mania broke out of dancing, and apparently that happened quite a lot around this time in history. There were lots of dancing manias, and these women just start dancing in the town square, and it's centered around that happening, but really it's about the main character Lisbeth, who is pregnant as the story starts and has experienced an awful lot of lots of miscarriages, which wasn't mentioned in the blurb, and wasn't something that, but it's just constant throughout the book, this theme, which is quite semi-autobiographical, because Kira Millward Hargrave, I think she really, she had a lot of loss before she had her child last year. So I think it's important for people to know that, because I think a lot of people might be triggered by that. So yeah, it's an important thing to know, which I kind of wish I'd known when we picked it for FOMO Book Club, that I could have warned people about, but until you read it, you don't know. But yes, we're going to be talking about it over on Alice's channel, 8 p.m. GMT on Sunday the 9th of July. So yeah, I'll put a link to that as well. So currently I am reading Sense and Sensibility and Northanger Abbey for Jane Austen July. I haven't really read much of either the past couple of days, but I'm really enjoying both of them. Buddy reading Sense and Sensibility with Gemma and Alice because they were going to read it this year, and so was I, because it's part of my Southwest Stories project. I'm trying to read books set in the Southwest while I'm living here in the Southwest of England, and this is set in Devon. They moved to Barton Cottage in Devon, so yeah, I'm really enjoying that. And it's I think the third or fourth read of Sense and Sensibility. It's only my second read of Northanger Abbey, but I'm enjoying both very, very much. I've also started When Things Are Alive They Hum, which is by Hannah Bent, and this was a book I saw recommended over on Scott's channel, Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and I'm so I got it out of the library, didn't read all of it, then it had to go back, and then I've got it back out again. So yeah, hopefully I'll get time to read that as well, because it's just a really lovely story so far. Two sisters, who one of whom has Down syndrome, and she has a congenital heart problem, which means that she needs a heart transplant, but in Hong Kong her dad is having trouble getting them to give her a heart transplant because she has Down syndrome. So yeah, it's a really lovely story about the two sisters, and it's told from both their perspectives, but very heartbreaking at the same time. Plans. First up, this is our next FOMO book club pick, and I just found it in my boxes, so I was dead chuffed because I can show it on the screen. So we are reading The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller for July and August. I'll put a video out about it because I didn't do that for the last FOMO book club pick. I usually put out a why you should read this book video, and I didn't, but I will for this one. And we're going to be we've started it. It's July, August. I haven't started reading it yet. We're a very casual book club. If you've not heard of us, I'm going to put a link to the announcement video where we talk about what it's about. We read the book over 2 months. You can read it at the start of the 2 months, the middle of the 2 months, end of the 2 months, whenever you want. Just pick it up whenever. And it's very casual. There's no reading schedule. And we will do a live discussion over on one of our channels. I think this one's going to be over on Gemma's channel. So yeah, join us if you fancy it. It's FOMO Book Club is the books we think we've missed out on, and I think a lot of people might have missed out on this. It's a fantastic book. It's a reread for me, but Gemma and Alice have never read it, so yeah, great book. I'm also hosting a read-along of Frankenstein from the 17th of July with Ange from Ange's Book Chatter. Lovely, lovely Ange. I'll put a link to my announcement video for that. We're going to be reading that from the 17th. We're going to do 2 chapters a day, and that is part of, I'm doing it as part of Jane Austen July. You don't have to be taking part in Jane Austen July to join us for the read-along, and I'm going to be listening to it on Audrey, which is an app that I absolutely adore, and I have not yet listened to a full book on there. I've listened to a number of stories. They've got a load of free stories you can try out Audrey with, but yeah, I'll put a link to the video explaining all of that as well. Wow, that was a lot. I'm really hoping this video isn't 50 hours long, because my views have really plummeted since I've been struggling to put out content and to watch content as well, because life has been a lot. The moving, the travelling back and forth to London, and other things that have been going on in my life which have required my attention. So yeah, and then of course what happens? My views are plummeting, my watch hours are plummeting, so yeah, it's not very fun. But I don't really do it for that, but it's not nice when you go into YouTube Studio and it just shows you your arrows all pointing down, like down. It's not very nice. Anyone else ever feel that? I'm hoping to get back to a regular posting schedule. Probably won't be a schedule as such at the moment. I've got so many videos that need to just go out. They're so old that I need to edit and get up. So if you see some old videos of my old house, don't be shocked. Anyway, I hope everyone's well, and hopefully I will see you again soon. Bye.